Hey guys, what's going on? Professor Headwreck here, and here is my what's on my NES Classic video. So here we have all the original games going through. I actually want to give a massive thank you to Patton Plays and Kyland K AKA KMFDManic. Patton Plays does a lot of tutorials on how to hack, what's compatible, things of that nature. And Kyland, or KMFDManic, actually has written a lot of the programs for HackG, a lot of experimental mods, things like that. So big thanks to the both of them, especially Kyland, whom I've conversed with quite a bit actually on YouTube. He's helped me out with a lot of. I was having some issues with cores or arcade ROMs that would not run. He told me ways around it and how to do it. So I mean, a massive thank you to him. So as you can see, here's all the original games, and then here are the folders that I added. I have Sega Master System, Game Boy, Arcade, and two separate Nintendo folders. So let's go into the first one, and here's what I added. I've got a Styanax, Baseball Simulator 1000, Bases Loaded, Batman. A lot of these are games that I actually do own the physical copies of. Some of them are just ones that I've heard a lot about and I've wanted to play. Battle Olympus for one. God, that was one I wanted to try as a kid. I never did, and I played a little bit of it, very similar to the Adventure of Link, Legend of Zelda: The Adventure of Link, which was what it was compared to, and I can see why. It looks and plays somewhat similar. Battletoads I don't really like. I threw it on there because a couple of friends of mine remembered playing it. I had a game and drinking night one night a few weeks back, and threw this on. And I mean, it's a good two-player beat-em-up type game, but it just never my cup of tea. Blaster Master, a fun game I remember from my childhood. Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, Chippendales Rescue Rangers. I did download Rescue Rangers 2, I just have not uploaded that one yet. Clue Land. No, I'm sorry, Contra. No Nintendo collection is complete without Contra. This is a classic to this day. Contra Force. Contra Force was one that I had just found out about a few years back, and I'd never played it. I figured I would give it a try, and I will be honest, I don't like it. Perhaps I was expecting something different. I mean, it's definitely a different Contra-type game. I don't care for it. Defenders of the Crown, Deja Vu. Deja Vu was one that I had read about in Nintendo Power, and I thought, you know what, I want to give this one a try. Looked pretty interesting, so I downloaded it. Double Dragon, Double Dribble, one of the best basketball games, I think, on the system. Dragon Warrior, all-time classic RPG. I remember I got my copy of Dragon Warrior with my subscription to Nintendo Power back in '91. Dragon Warrior 2, I have not played. Dragon Warrior 3 and Dragon Warrior 4, both games that I remember as a kid with my best friend Mike. Dragon Warrior 3 I purchased for him for Christmas of '92, and that same Christmas he got Dragon Warrior 4. So I have really good memories of watching him play both of these. So yeah, DuckTales, an obvious classic and one that I had as a child, so I had to throw that on. I always wanted to play DuckTales 2. I found out about that one some years ago, and I figured, you know what, I'll throw this on because I want to try it. Fexanadu, the Flintstones, Surprise at Dinosaur Peak. One that I've heard of it's one of the more expensive games on the system, and I figured, well, let's see what all the hype is about. Friday the 13th. I remember reading about Friday the 13th in not Game Players magazine. So I figured I would download it and see how bad or good it is. I mean, I think the Angry Video Game Nerd had done a review on this. It was interesting. Gargoyles Quest 2, which I've started playing, and I really do enjoy that. Capcom's Gold Medal Challenge 1992, another really good game that my buddy Mike and I used to play. Jaws, which is an odd choice for me, but I remember before I got my Nintendo, one of my mom's friends, her husband had one, and she loaned it to me. And my best friend Mike Keebler, whom I've spoken of at great lengths on this channel, he had Jaws, and I borrowed it from him. So King's Quest, I played a couple of the King's Quest series on the Tandy 1000 when I was a real little kid, maybe 7, 8 years old, I think, when we first moved to the States, and my dad was finishing his last 9 months out at Albuquerque, New Mexico, Kirkland Air Force Base. We bought our first computer. It was a Tandy 1000, and had two of the King's Quest games. So I had a lot of good memories playing those. I figured I'd check out King's Quest V. Kung Fu, a definite classic. So, out of that folder and into the second Nintendo folder. I have everything alphabetical, too. That's why, you know, NES and then NES Continue. So here we have Little Nemo the Dream Master, one that I read about in Nintendo Power, and I had always wanted to try. I've tried it out. I really, really enjoy it. Little Samson was one, too, that I did not find out about until quite a few years back. And I know that it's by far like the most expensive, next to Stadium Events, the most expensive game on the system. So I figured, you know what, I want to see what all the hype is about, and I can honestly say that the game is fun. It is a very good game, just what I've played of it so far. Maniac Mansion, definitely a classic on the system. Mega Man, yeah, crappy box art and all. Great game, horrible box art. Mega Man 3, Mega Man 4, Mega Man 5, Mega Man 6. Now, 4, 5, and 6 I have never played. Other than turning it on and just testing the ROMs to make sure that they work, that is all the farther I've gone. So, Metal Gear, another game along with Jaws that I had borrowed from my best friend Mike. I hadn't played it, honestly, since I think 1989, so I figured I would download it, and I made it no farther than I did back then. So, yeah, obviously, you can't, it's not a run and gun. You've got to do a lot of stealth. Probably one of the first stealth games that I can probably think of. Mighty Final Fight, I'd rented that once from Blockbuster Video back in 1992, and brought it to my buddy Mike's house. He does not like beat-em-ups, and so we did not play it. So I think 5 minutes of it was all the longer I played it, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back to 1992, and I'm going to play this. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! I know that Punch-Out! Is a name that is just, it's as old, not as old as Nintendo, but I mean, it was one of their first arcade releases. I did not know that. I've always associated Punch-Out! With Mike Tyson, so I figured, you know what, I'm not going to play the Punch-Out! That's already on here with Mr. Dream. I want Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Ninja Gaiden 2, this was another game that I played a lot as a kid, my favorite of the three, and honestly the only one that I've ever beaten. Ninja Gaiden 3, Pinball, I loved as a kid. I have a lot of great memories with that. Platoon, I have the cartridge of Platoon, but it's actually, the game itself is factory sealed, so I have not played this. I'm sorry, I did play it for a few minutes shortly after I downloaded it, but yeah, not since 1990, and it was not a fun game. You're probably asking, why did I download it? Yeah, because you know what? Hey, nostalgic value. Pro Wrestling was an awesome game. I was glad I found this one to throw on there. RBI Baseball. Renegade is a game that I think I had fonder memories of than when I had played it again, because I did not like it replaying it. River City Ransom, definitely a classic beat-em-up, and probably one of the best co-op beat-em-ups, I think, on the system. Shadowgate, another one with Deja Vu in that same vein that I had wanted to try. I've still not played either of them. Shatterhands, one that I read about in Nintendo Power and decided I wanted to give it a shot. Spy Hunter. My buddy John and my buddy Jason wanted me to download this. I tried the arcade ROM, could not get the arcade ROM to run properly. A lot of sound and lag issues, so I figured I would just download this one. I did play it on the computer when I was a kid. I don't really have a lot of memories of it, but, you know, I mean, I know that it is a classic, and a lot of people regard it as a very good game. The original Ninja Turtles, Turtles 2, the arcade game. The Tengen version of Tetris, which I do prefer over the Nintendo version, simply because it just has the two-player co-op. It's a little more like the original Tetris. So, yeah. Three Stooges, one that I remember watching Game Player's videotape magazine, or Game Player's magazine, I'm sorry, they had videotapes that actually my best friend Mike had like 4 or 5 of them. We would sit and eat pizza and watch them, kind of like watching Let's Play videos before there were Let's Play videos. But this was one that they reviewed, and we had this on floppy disk on my Tandy 1000. So, Top Gun. And The Uninvited, which is obviously like Shadowgate and Deja Vu, this one I did start playing, and it is very cool, very reminiscent of the old, not text adventures, but it has that old PC vibe, obviously, because it's a PC game. All right. Back out of the folder, and Sega Master System, which I remember as a kid trying to decide between Nintendo and Sega. I did have a little bit of a love affair with the Sega Master System. Not much I know about the library, though, honestly. I downloaded Shoplifter because I couldn't get the arcade ROM to run. This was one that I do remember playing a lot in the arcades that I loved. I had a big thing with the helicopters. Very fascinated with them, Airwolf and things of that nature. So figured I'd try out the Master System version of Double Dragon. And King's Quest for the Crown we had, like I said, we had the Tandy 1000, and this was the King's Quest game that we had. And I actually didn't find this out until a few weeks back, that this was released on the Sega Master System, obviously upgraded graphics, and a little bit different because obviously with the Tandy 1000, or the DOS version, you do a lot of typing for your commands, and with this, you're kind of given subtext that you pick and choose. I dicked around with it just for a few minutes. I will go back to it. Trying to remember exactly how to play it, though. Back on out. And then into the Game Boy. I did have a Game Boy as a kid. And here we have Castlevania the Adventure, Castlevania Belmont's Revenge, Double Dragon, Final Fantasy Adventure, Final Fantasy Legend 2, Final Fantasy Legend 3, and Final Fantasy Legend. All 4 of these my best friend Mike had, and I did play a little bit of each of them on his Game Boy. I do know that these are not actually Final Fantasy games. I believe it was SNES Drunk that I'd found that out from watching his channel. I think they were either, Saga or Second Densetsu. They were basically branded as Final Fantasy to make them a little more accessible to fans here in the United States, because they would, brand recognition. So, Super Mario Land and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan. And then finally into what I was really excited about with the capabilities of this system is the arcade. I love the fact that I've been able to download arcade ROMs. And actually, I'm going to do an update on my Super Nintendo Classic. I did add a bunch more stuff to that, so I do want to do an update. But here, Afterburner 2, Altered Beast, which I love the arcade version of Altered Beast. Contra, the arcade version of that, which I had never played, and I know that it had been re-released on one of the discs on I think it was like the Konami Classic Series on the Xbox 360. I did not have an Xbox 360, so I never picked that up. So I was like, you know what? Hey, I'll download the ROM. Dig Dug, actually my buddy John wanted, these are some of the games that he wanted me to download to play. Dig Dug, he wanted Galaga, and so both of those I'm not too familiar with in terms of ever playing them in the arcade. I've played them. I think Dig Dug, I played the computer version, and Galaga, I know that I've played. Golden Axe was one that I did play a handful of times in the arcade. I was trying to get Golden Axe 2 to run. I could not get it to run. I know Patton Plays. I've tried some different cores. He'd shown what to use. For some reason, it just would not work for me. But then again, though, I was not the only one that had that issue. Kangaroo, that was another game that my buddy John wanted to play, so I downloaded that. That's an interesting little game. I was kind of playing around with it. Kung Fu Master, I do remember playing that, and that was what kind of started my love affair with the Nintendo game Kung Fu, because I know that Kung Fu was essentially a port of this. Marvel vs. Capcom. The reason I put Marvel vs. Capcom on, I wanted to run Children of the Atom and Marvel Superheroes. I could not get those to run. I would download them. I kept running into access to path denied error screens, and it was essentially screwing my hack key. It was Kyland, the KMFDManic, who told me how to get them to run. This I got able to. This ran perfectly right off the bat. The other ones I could not. But that's why I want to thank him in particular, because he told me how to get them to run. So actually, I would like to maybe do a video on what happens if you run into one of those errors and how to fix it and ways around it. Operation Wolf, one I played in the arcade, and it is still just as hard. I kept thinking though that even if you died and you hadn't enough quarters, you would continue from where you're at. No matter how far you've progressed, you die, you start right from the beginning again. Rampage, I actually modded my buddy Dave's. I added Rampage to his because he wanted to play Rampage. So that's why I figured I'd download it on here. Russian Attack. Russian Attack I played as a kid. When we lived in Albuquerque, there was this pizza place that we would go to every so often for dinner, and they had a Russian Attack arcade cabinet. And my dad, it was always kind of customary. I would get, a couple quarters or so, and he would let me go play. So I do have fond memories of that. The Star Wars arcade, I remember when I lived up in upstate New York, there's a little town called Auburn, which ironically Man-O-War is from Auburn. But Star Wars Arcade, they had one of those in there, and that was one of my favorites. And when I was actually able to get the ROM to work for this, I was really excited because it's held up, and even for back when it was first released, boy, way ahead of its time. Time Pilot, this was one that my buddy John also wanted to play. He remembered as a kid pumping quarters when he lived in California, playing a lot. So. WWF Superstars and WWF WrestleFest. My buddy Jason was real big into the old WWF stuff, and I was too to an extent. But I do remember seeing these at our local grocery store, PNC. Every 6 months or so, they would change out arcade games in the front, and I remember both of these actually being in there. X-Men Arcade, that was one I remember in the mid-90s. It was always a big thing. We would go to either Rochester or Syracuse. Actually, up in Rochester, there's a mall called Eastview Mall. And they had a massive FYE that had like just tons of CDs and books and movies. And in the back, they had a massive arcade. And this was one. It was like a ritual. We all, like me and 3 of my friends, would always go into the back and we would just pump quarter after quarter playing this, trying to see how far we could get. And then X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which was one I thought I could get to run when I was trying to get Children of the Atom to run. Still ran into the same thing of the access to path denied error coming up. Did what Kyland told me to do, and I got that one to run. So, yeah, that's everything. And then, obviously, just to kind of give a little showcase, here we go. We're going to run some X-Men versus Street Fighter before I end the video. Let's quarter up here. Give a little... I always pick Wolverine, and... let's go with Ken. I love the fact that this works. Alright, so hey, you guys, thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you guys on the next video. Take her easy.